Hi class, in lesson 1.4 we will be investigating with divisibility rules. Learning targets for today, we will formulate divisibility rules based on patterns seen in factors, and we will use factors to help develop divisibility rules. Key term to look for today in lesson 1.4 will be divisibility rules. Let's take a look at problem 1 on page 36, where we will be exploring 2, 5, and 10. To get started today with your group members, I would like you to answer number 1 and number 2, listing the 10 multiples for each number that you see below, and then for number 2, what do you notice? Try to figure out any patterns. If we take a look at number 1, the multiples of 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Multiples of 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and the multiples of 10, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. For number 2, some patterns that you hopefully noticed. Let's first start with the multiples of 2. All of the multiples of 2 are even and end in the number 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8. For the multiples of 5, all of them end in a 0 or a 5, and for 10, all multiples of 10 are going to end in a 0, and you should also notice then that all multiples of 10 are also multiples of 2 and 5. Divisibility rules are tests for determining whether one whole number is divisible by another. A divisibility rule must work for every number. Very important that you remember that. So if we take a look at number 3, we want to fill in the table. We want to write a divisibility rule for the numbers 2, 5, and 10, and then we want to show an example that follows your rule. Go ahead and do number 3 with your group members. If a number is going to be divisible by 2, then the ones digit is going to be a 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8. You can also just look for that number to be an even number. The example that we have here is 186. You could, of course, have a different example that you put down with your group members, but we do know that any one that you would put down in there is divisible by 2 because the ones digit is going to be an even number. A number is going to be divisible by 5 if the ones digit is either a 0 or a 5. The example that you see here, 145, we see a 5 in that ones digit, so we know that 145 is divisible by 5. And finally, for the number 10, a number is going to be divisible by 10 when the ones digit is a 0. In the example that you see here, 630 has a 0 in the ones place. Let's turn to page 37 and take a look at problem 2, where we will be focusing on exploring the number 3 and 6. Let's start off with 3 first. It says that each number shown in the table is divisible by 3. We're actually going to skip number 1 and just look at number 2. They're asking you to analyze each number that is divisible by 3. Then you're going to write a rule in the table below to indicate when a number is divisible by 3. And it gives you a little hint here to consider the sum of the digits of the numbers that you are analyzing. So go ahead and do number 2 down at the bottom of page 37. If we take a look at the table then, a number is going to be divisible by 3 if the sum of the digits in the number is divisible by 3. So an example that we have here is 168. If you add all of those numbers up together, you would get 15. And 15 is divisible by 3, so therefore 168 is divisible by 3. Let's turn to page 38 and take a look at number 3 up at the top. Now we are shifting our focus to the number 6. What we need to do first is circle the numbers that you think are divisible by 6 in the table that you completed in question 1. So go back and take a look at that table and get all of those numbers circled that you think are divisible by 6 and explain your reasoning. Go ahead and do that with your group members now. Here are the numbers back on the previous page that you should have circled that are divisible by 6, 300, 882, 1,230, 3,762, 42, 2,784, and 3,582. Now, the reasoning that you should have explained for number 3 was that these numbers are divisible by both 2 and 3, which are both factors of 6. So these numbers are also then going to be divisible by 6. Number 4 tells us to analyze each number that we circled that we think is divisible by 6 and try to write a rule then to indicate when a number is divisible by 6 in the table shown below. Go ahead and do that with your group members for number 4. A number is going to be divisible by 6 if the number is divisible by both 2 and 3. So an example that we have here is 264. We see that there is a 4 in the ones digit, so we know that it is divisible by 2, and if we add up 2 plus 6 plus 4, we get 12, and we know that 3 can go into 12, so 264 is going to be divisible by 6 because it is divisible by 2 and by 3. Let's turn to page 39 and take a look at problem 3, where we will be exploring the number 9. We are going to do this one the same exact way that we worked with exploring the rule for 3. We're going to just focus on the 9 column now. If we take a look at number 2, we are analyzing the numbers that we see in the list. We are writing a rule to indicate when a number is divisible by 9, and they give you the same hint that we used for the number 3, so use that same clue when exploring the divisibility rule for 3 like you will for trying to figure out the rule for 9. Go ahead and do that with your group members right now. Fill out the table for number 2. So if we looked closely at the 5 numbers in the table that were divisible by 9, you can see that the sum of the digits of the number are also divisible by 9. So if we look at the example, we have 279. We know that if we add all those digits up, we get 18. 18 is divisible by 9, so 279 is divisible by 9. Let's take a look at problem 4 on page 40, where we will be exploring the number 4 and looking at the divisibility rule for that number. It says for number 1, up at the top it says that each number listed in the table is divisible by 4. So we want to try to look at any patterns that we notice about each number. A hint that they give you for number 1 is to look at the number that is formed by the last 2 digits in each number. So go ahead and take a look at number 1 and number 2 with your group members. For number 1, some patterns that you hopefully noticed when looking at all of the numbers in the table. Each number is an even number, or each number is divisible by 2, if we think back to our rule that we came up with for testing for the number 2. And if we look at the last 2 digits of each number, they are also going to form a number that is divisible by 4. If we look at the first number in the table, for example, the last 2 digits are a 1 and a 6, and we know that 4 can go into 16, so 116 would be divisible by 4. A rule then for number 2, a number is going to be divisible by 4 if the number formed by the last 2 digits is divisible by 4. We have a similar example that we use in the table here. 316 is going to be divisible by 4 because, again, if we look at those last 2 digits, 16 is divisible by 4, so that would mean that 316 is divisible by 4. We are going to skip problem 5 and turn to page 43 and take a look at the talk the talk activity. It reminds us that divisibility rules are tests for determining whether one number is divisible by another number. It gives you a bullet point list of all of the numbers that we did talk about, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10. Please use this page as a resource if you ever want to remember what a divisibility rule is for a given number. Our crew member is telling us that there is another divisibility rule that we did not mention. A number is divisible by 8 if the number formed by the last 3 digits is divisible by 8. So what I would like you to do is take a look at number 1, determine if each number is divisible by 8 using that divisibility rule that the crew member helped us out with. Do number 1, A through D, with your group members. If we take a look at letter A, yes, 75,024 is going to be divisible by 8. The last 3 digits, 0, 2, 4, 24, is divisible by 8. For letter B, no, the last 3 digits are not divisible by 8, 466. Same with letter C, 729 is not divisible by 8, so 19,729 is also not divisible by 8. And for letter D, yes, if we look at 968, 8 can go into that number, so 1,968 is divisible by 8. Let's go back to page 41 now and take a look at problem 5. This is going to be your homework for tonight. I do want you to do all of problem 5. You are going to be answering questions 1 through 5. It does turn over to page 42, so make sure that you get all of the problems completed for homework. I do want to point out that for number 5, you are going to be thinking of your own mystery number and creating clues that you are going to give to a partner to see if they can determine what your mystery number is. I want you to refer back to number 4 and use at least 4 clues for your mystery number. If you want to have a couple more, that's fine, but don't get crazy, and try to make it as easy to follow the directions as possible. Don't make it very, very difficult for your partner when they're trying to figure out what your mystery number is. That is going to do it for lesson 1.4 on investigating divisibility rules. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.